Honestly, there are a couple players in college football who I feel bad for, and one of them is Payton Thorne. After becoming one of the best stories in college football in 2021, Payton Thorne has really taken a turn for the worst. He was a 3-star recruit coming out of Chicago and ended up helping Michigan State have a tremendous season with Mel Tucker. Thorne was a great game manager and looked like he could help MSU go in the right direction. Thorne had a decent 2022 season, but ultimately he would decide to enter the transfer portal, and for some unknown reason he would go to Auburn. No offense, but it never fit. I never understood why Hugh Freeze wanted Payton Thorne to run his offense, as again, I don't think Payton Thorne's a bad quarterback, but it just wasn't good a fit. He was undersized, he wasn't big enough, and he didn't look like he would fit in the SEC. Instead though, Hugh Freeze ended up going for Thorne, and him and Robbie Ashford split time last year. Neither of them were very good, and while Ashford looked more like an SEC quarterback, Thorne really continued to struggle. Going into 2024, Thorne would use his final year of eligibility to come back for the Tigers. I was saying all offseason that Auburn is not going to do anything until they find a new quarterback, as again, it's nothing against Thorne, but he's just not good enough to be Auburn's quarterback. Instead, Freeze continues to trot him out, and he ended up playing terrible against Cal, having multiple interceptions in the last few minutes, and ultimately also kind of cost them against Arkansas. Auburn cannot figure out the quarterback situation, and Payton Thorne at this point is getting screwed over as he's being trotted out to fail at Auburn. In today's video, I want to take a look at his career though. We're going to talk about his rise at Michigan State, his great blue chip story coming out of high school, and ultimately what has gone wrong for him at Auburn. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about what happened to Payton Thorne. So in order to understand how Thorne got to this point, we first need to go back in time. He was born in Naperville, Illinois in 2001 into a pretty big football family. His dad, Jeff, was the offensive coordinator at Wheaton-Warrenville South High School, where Payton was born, and eventually he moved to North Central University to be their offensive coordinator after Payton was born as well. He had been the quarterback at Eastern Illinois when he was in college and was elevated to North Central's head coaching position in 2015, where he went 66-10 and won a Division III championship in 2019 before becoming Western Michigan's offensive coordinator for a year in 2022. Payton's grandpa is also in the Illinois High School Football Hall of Fame with a 181-61 record at Wheaton Central High School and Wheaton-Warrenville South High School. So yeah, Payton has a lot of football in his background, saying, quote, "My grandpa and dad's competitiveness is unmatched, especially my dad, and I want to win more than anybody, and I think I picked that up from him." That turned him into being a pretty special high school quarterback. In middle school, he developed a connection with a wide receiver by the name of Jaden Reed, and that would continue all throughout both of their high school careers and even further. He started his high school career at Matea Valley High School in Aurora, where he got his first playing time as a sophomore in 2016. He ended up throwing for 1,600 yards and 23 touchdowns that year. But Matea Valley struggled to a 3-9 record that season, so Payton's family decided to move him back home to Naperville for 2017, where he would be playing for Naperville Central High School. In 2017, he started to get some interest from programs. Western Michigan was the first FBS team that offered him a scholarship, so he committed to them before his senior season. He then proceeded to become the Chicago Sun-Times Player of the Year after throwing for 3,000 yards, 40 touchdowns, and just 9 picks, as well as running for 451 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground. Naperville's offense ended up putting up 37 points per game, went 7-4, and undefeated in their conference. His high school coach, Mike Stein, said, quote, "Statistics-wise, he's the best to ever play here at Naperville Central, and he motivates those around him. It takes a special kid to be a leader, and a special kid that people want to follow, and Payton is that." He didn't go unannounced by the Power 5 for that long though, as in December of 2018, he was offered by one of his childhood dream schools in the Michigan State Spartans and head coach Mark D'Antonio. He officially decommitted from Western Michigan and flipped to Michigan State over NC State in just a few weeks, reuniting with Jaden Reed, who had been at Western Michigan. After signing, he said, quote, "This has really been an honor for me to get the opportunity to play at a program like that and play on that stage, and I'm really looking forward to it." Payton would end up finishing as a 3-star recruit in the class of 2019, the 16th best prospect in the state of Illinois, and the 18th best dual threat quarterback in the entire class. So how did his career end up going at Michigan State? Well, let's take a look. So from there, Thorne would end up arriving at Michigan State and would enroll early for spring practice. He joined the team in the summer for their workouts, and honestly, no one was really talking about him. It was pretty clear from the beginning that Coach D'Antonio had intended on redshirting him, and he'd do that for his freshman season. 2019 was sort of the beginning of Michigan State's downfall though, as they went 7-6 with a bowl victory over Wake Forest, and eventually Mark D'Antonio retired after the season, leading the Spartans to sign Mel Tucker to be their next head coach for the 2020 season. He had just blown up at Georgia and at Colorado, so Mel Tucker was seen as a hot commodity in the coaching world. Then of course, everything in the world went crazy in 2020, so he actually ended up doing workouts in a garage and attending quarterback meetings over Zoom in the spring until the Big Ten started up football practice for the 2020 season once again. The quarterback room for the Spartans in 2020 was kind of weird since Payton was sitting behind Rocky Lombardi and Theo Day. Bad quarterback play was part of the reason for Michigan State's 2-5 record that year, with Rocky Lombardi throwing for 1,090 yards and 8 touchdowns with 9 picks. But Payton quickly established himself as quarterback number 2 in the depth chart, making relief appearances in 3 games, and even starting at quarterback in their final game against Penn State, where he threw for 325 yards and 3 touchdowns, but still finished the season with 582 yards, 3 scores, and 3 picks. In 2021, though, everything would change. The Spartans would explode to an 11-2 record and finish ranked number 9 in the AP poll and 3rd in the Big Ten. Their only losses on the season were being against number 3 Purdue and Ohio State. They finished the year with a bowl victory over number 12 Pittsburgh in the Peach Bowl, and Payton was a huge part of their offensive success. He was named the starter before the season after Rocky Lombardi lost the quarterback battle, and he decided to transfer to Northern Illinois. Payton would proceed to throw for 3,232 yards with 27 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, with his favorite target being his old middle school and high school teammate, Jaden Reed. Reed ended up having over 1,000 yards and 10 receiving touchdowns, and things were looking up for the Spartans in 2022. Mel Tucker was the next big thing, but sadly, he'd have an incredible collapse in 2022. The Spartans ended up going 5-7 and missed a bowl game entirely. They started the year 2-4, and Payton couldn't turn the season around, finishing with 2,600 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 11 picks to go alongside with a singular rushing score. His main 2 targets were Keon Coleman and Jaden Reed, who had 798 and 636 yards respectively. It was clear that Mel Tucker had something go haywire that year, and there were serious problems in the locker room because this wasn't the type of letdown season you just have. There were some issues that Payton would need to get away from his senior season, so he decided to enter the transfer portal after the year was over, and ended up at Auburn with their new head coach Hugh Freeze. He was considered a 3-star transfer recruit and the 43rd best quarterback transfer in that class, behind guys like Ben Finley, Casey Thompson, and Phil Dracovic. The QB room at Auburn was pretty bad when Payton got there. The 2 quarterbacks that would be pushing for playing time in 2023 were Oregon transfer Robbie Ashford, who threw for 1,600 yards and 7 touchdowns, and redshirt freshman Holden Gariner. Auburn also brought in Zach Calzada through the transfer portal from Texas A&M, but he'd never end up playing, and he would transfer to Incarnate Word. Payton came to Auburn not just to play under Coach Freeze, but to go in the veer and shoot offense and be the clear-cut starting quarterback at an SEC program and elevate his draft stock. But the problem was that Auburn themselves were in the middle of a rebuild, and 2023 would get ugly pretty quickly. They ended the season at 6-7 with a bowl loss to Maryland in the Music City Bowl, and the season included a 10-31 home loss to New Mexico State in a game in which Payton threw for 148 yards and a touchdown. Payton struggled mightily in 2023, finishing the season with 1,700 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions, his worst as a Power 5 starting quarterback. 2024 has gotten off to an even worse start so far. Auburn is 2-2 through their first 4 games, with losses now to Cal and Arkansas, and Payton is getting a lot of heat. Cal and Alabama A&M were the last 2 starts that Payton made in his career, as he was eventually benched for Hank Brown for the New Mexico game. Brown actually looked really decent in that one, but going into this past weekend, Payton Thorne would get another opportunity. After struggling, Hank Brown was eventually benched, and Thorne was thrown in against Arkansas. He ended up going 13 of 22 for 213 yards with 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. Ultimately, Thorne could not get the job done and messed up again late, and they lost at home 24-14 to a Razorbacks team that many expected to be near the bottom, but that was not his worst performance. In that 14-21 home loss against Cal, Payton threw for 165 yards, a touchdown, and 4 interceptions. There should have been one more as well. So far on the season, Thorne has thrown for 700 yards with 7 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. More importantly, he's lost 2 crucial games for them, and after the Cal game he said, quote, "It starts with me. Personally, as I watch the film, you know I'm looking at where my eyes are, where my reads are, and making sure that I'm playing crisp as I can, so obviously there's stuff to clean up there, and each guy looks at himself individually and tries to learn from the tape, so now we're focused on the weekend." Honestly, he may get an opportunity just because of how disorganized the quarterback room is. I guess Holden Gariner hasn't progressed at all because he's not seeing the field, and true freshman Walker White must not be ready. Auburn's in kind of a dumpster fire mode right now, and Payton Thorne epitomizes this. He's not the right guy for the system, he should never be in this position, and he's definitely not being properly prepared to win games at Auburn. Something at Auburn I think finally broke him, and there are multiple things that could be. Behind the sidelines, he hasn't really got much support from his head coach, who announced publicly in a press conference, he said, quote, "It's really hard for me not to play a young man who's consistently the best performer in practice over and over again, but we have to go in a different direction," and then proceeded to say that the coaches did nothing wrong against Cal, essentially blaming Payton entirely for the loss, just a few days after some of the players on the team announced that they were riding with Payton. Running back Damari Alston said, quote, "I was calling everybody after the game and just telling the guys that we can still accomplish whatever we want to accomplish this year. The game didn't go as we wanted it to, and that's bad execution on the offensive side of the ball, and now it's a new week." When statements like that are made in college sports, though, it pretty much always means that a player or coach has pretty much run their course with that program. On top of that, a few college football sports bettors found his Venmo and were requesting large amounts of money from him so that they could pay back the bets they made on Auburn. Payton said, quote, "When they lose money, they want the money back. But when they win money on a parlay, no one's ever sending any money. You have to go back to where your foundation is in life, and for me, that's my faith and my family, and just doing that, but also keeping the focus on what's next." So what went wrong with Payton Thorne? Personally, I came up with 3 reasons, and I think the first one is that 1, a lot of people put too much stock into that 2021 season at Michigan State. It was kind of a weird season in general, and given how Mel Tucker ended up with the Spartans, it's fair to say that it was kind of a fluke year for everyone involved. There's also a possibility that 2, Payton was just a good game manager and surrounded by 2 really good NFL players in Jaden Reed, Keon Coleman, and even Kenneth Walker. Those guys may have really helped him succeed, and in 2023 he kind of showed his true stripes. He always had really good players throughout his high school and college career until he moved to Auburn. But I think 3, the main thing that went wrong for Payton is he's just not the right guy for Auburn's system. He's not the tallest dude in the world, not the fastest dude in the world, and not the biggest built dude in the world, and combining that with just poor coaching and development and a lack of support has led him to be pretty much thrown into the wolves. He's being told to execute an offense and guide a program that he's just not good enough to run. Honestly, if Payton Thorne would have went back to like Western Michigan or Northern Illinois, I think he would be one of the better quarterbacks in the MAC, but going to a place like Auburn, there was no way in heck that he was going to succeed there. I never quite understood it, and most of the blame in my eyes is on Hugh Freeze, as for some unknown reason, he thought that Thorne was going to be the answer. Robbie Ashford was obviously more SEC ready, but he just couldn't develop his passing game. Hugh Freeze has butchered the quarterback room. As I said earlier, Holden Gariner for some reason isn't ready to play, and at some point they might just throw Walker White out there because why not, and they don't want him to transfer. Either way though, it's kind of sad for Payton Thorne. He had a really great story coming out of Naperville, ended up having an awesome season at Michigan State, and ultimately just picked the wrong school to go to. That, in my opinion, is what went wrong for Payton Thorne, but what do you guys think? If you're an Auburn or Michigan State fan, what do you think the reason why Payton has struggled is, and what other players should I do a What Happened To video on next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.